Honorable Green also apologized. Maybe let me say if there are any other apologies before I hand over to the chairperson from members. It looks like there are no further apologies. I will hand over to you, chairperson, introducing your team as well as welcoming us in your place.
Thanks, Chairperson, members of the Portfolio Committee, and officials that are also present here. Members, Chairperson, it's an honor for us to welcome you in this humble abode institution. You can see we are not really a fancy institution, but at least we basically are more concentrating on the work that we have to do. My chairperson, for record purposes, I'm Thabo Manyoni, the chairperson of the Municipal Demarcation Board. And next to me, we also have the deputy chairperson, the cameraman. We've got our deputy chairperson, Umamo Bali Mieni.
Oh,
Yeah, from KwaZulu-Natal. And next to it, we've got our COO, who is presently acting as the CEO of the institution, Ubabu Aruwani Ramagaza. Not the Sutuwa. Yes. I would, so that members can hear the voices of others, I would pass this mic so that they introduce themselves. As they please.
Greetings, members. My name is Bariki Ndichabe. I'm responsible for stakeholder management and communication. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Daniel Sobake. I'm the acting COO.
Good afternoon. I am Gunzolo Baji, I'm the CFO. Thank you.
CFO.
Good afternoon, honorable members. My name is Nono Bela, the Executive Manager, Corporate Services. Thanks.
It must still come back to the chairperson. For somebody have excluded.
Piggy, I didn't hear you introducing yourself. You don't want members to hear your voice. All right. That's Piggy. She's the one who's working very hard to make sure that you get proper clarity on presentations and so forth. Chairperson. Chairperson, with that, I think we'll have then again to hand over to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I thought we were going to say welcome to, but no, you have done it indirectly. As per the announcement, tabling and committee reports, ATC number 150 of 30 September 2022, Minister of Culture tabled the reports and the audited financial statements of Vote 3, Vote 15, and the entities in respect of 2021-22 financial year. in line with Section 8, subsection 3, and 64, subsection A of the PFMA. We are following up on that. That is why we are here. So the main subject for discussion would be briefing of Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs on the MDB's 2021-22 financial annual report. So that's what we are about today. And I would immediately hand over to the chairperson to take us through that briefing.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, honorable members. Yes, it is an honor for MDB to be able to appear in front of the committee and give a report on our performance. I would just like to give a general overview, Chairperson, mostly also so that we all are on par, looking back into our past performance to date. I must indicate, Chairperson, of course, we are very proud to indicate first that we have received an unqualified audit opinion and with no findings, in other words, a clean audit, for 4 consecutive years. So, of course, we are under pressure to make sure that we retain and maintain that status quo, not only on the report, but also on other areas of performance. I must indicate, honorable members, Chairperson, we stressed this point before, that amongst others, we are trying to intensify our awareness program. In other words, we are trying to make sure that we reach as much as possible to communities out there so that we explain ourselves on decisions that we have taken because they impact on South Africans general, and also to explain our intention on some of the activities that we would be embarking on as mandated by the Act. I would say, Chairperson, if you observe the past performance of this body and to date, taking for instance the performance of the country on local government elections, you'll realize, members, that the social conflict, displeasure and so on that we used to have, mainly on matters that are related to the decision of the Demarcation Board. Vuani is the classical example, as we all know. You'll realize that with our past election performance, that dissatisfaction has been minimized. So we believe that the issue of interacting with communities, communities is quite important, and it is bearing fruits in that regard. So we would like, it's part of our objective in terms of our performance, to make sure that we intensify on that. And also, of course, make sure that we concentrate on consulting, not only with communities as they are generally defined, but also with stakeholders, in particular, our traditional leadership, mostly in areas like in KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape. But generally, I'm saying those are the areas that we would also like to focus on when we go on with the implementation of that objective as part of our annual performance plan. You'll realize that, Chairperson, we have completed reports on norms and standards for all municipal powers and functions. We have been conducting capacity assessments and we have issued the reports in this regard. Yes, of course, the snag in that area is that we depend on the third party, in other words, municipalities to respond on the questionnaires, on our probing and so on, to be able to reach that objective of ensuring that we meet our mandate as defined by the Act. The limitation has been there where some of the municipalities will respond late and some, of course, would not respond at all. Generally speaking, if you look into our performance, you will realize, Chairperson, that where there has been a lack of performance, in other words, where we have not received 100% as we would love, but received 95% and so on, it's mainly where we were depending on the third parties to respond. Internally, of course, we have achieved quite well on matters pertaining to internal controls and oversight environment. That is well managed to date. If you allow, Chairperson, with that general background, and if you allow, Chairperson, I can then hand over to our acting CEO to present the report. Will that be fine?
Yes.
Thanks very much. Bob Allen.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to the members of the Portfolio Committee. As the chairperson has indicated, it's a privilege to be hosting yourself. It doesn't happen often. When it happens, I think we have to extend our gratitude. I also say this because we often very insistent on indicating that we report to Parliament, and this is where we report, essentially. So we're very conscious of that. Without wasting any time, I would like to indicate that our presentation will be focusing mainly on, obviously, the performance with regards to 21-22 financial year, and what we're presenting here is audited performance overall, and how we performed against our predetermined objectives, and also how we fared in terms of our financial management processes. We always like to highlight where our mandate comes from, because it's important to set the scene, but also to put everything into context. The Municipal Demarcation Board's mandate is derived from Section 155, 3B, and 157.4A, respectively, of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And obviously, then national legislation came forth, the Demarcation Act, the Municipal Structures Act, and obviously the PFMA that guides how we should be doing our work. So those are our main legislative provision, legislation that we focus on as the Municipal Demarcation Board. But to be a little bit more specific in terms of our mandate, overall for the municipal boundary redetermination process, we derive our mandate in terms of processes and systems from the Municipal Demarcation Act. With regards to ward delimitation, we get all of that from the Municipal Structures Act. The same for municipal capacity assessments. It's also currently sitting in the Municipal Structures Act. And obviously, broadly, we also do render advisory services to government overall with regards to the kind of work that we do. I'm not going to dwell too much on our vision and mission, because our strategy as it stands now, it's going to be getting into its last of a year. So it's the same strategy that we've been implementing, and it's the same strategy that we tabled with the committee when it was adopted by the board. But overall, in terms of our strategy, we've got about 4 outcomes that we've set for ourselves. All of that are designed to get us to the impact that we want to see in the country. So the first one is organizational excellence. when the board adopted the strategy, it was very critical that we want to make sure that the organization becomes excellent in what it does in terms of governance, because if you make mistakes or you flounder in terms of your corporate governance, chances are even on your core aspects of the organization, you are likely not going to make it. So we set ourselves that particular outcome to say that we want to be excellent as an organization. But also, with regards to our core, we told ourselves that we want to see well-defined municipal spaces overall, and that includes municipal boundary determinations and also ward delimitation. We then also said ourselves that we want improved access to research and spatial information. Local government, a lot of people always say it's a very complicated sector and all the like. And what that means is that there's a whole lot of information that's generated at different levels, and there's different decisions that are being taken at different levels, and all of these require information. So we set ourselves that target to say we want to make sure that of all the research that we do, and also all the research that we participate in, either in local government, we want to make sure that we improve access to such information, not only for the benefit of the institution as the MDB, but overall in the state. But we also set to improve public and stakeholder participation, as the chairperson has indicated. This is one area that we have dedicated a lot of resources over the last few years, but also we want to continue entrenching it because it's very critical, not only for the success of our democracy, but also to make sure that our citizenry or the citizens of South Africa feel part of all the processes that are happening in government. So those are the four objectives that we've set for ourselves. As you can see in slide number 9, I'm not going to repeat what the chairperson has already indicated. It's just a highlight of our achievements for the 21-22 financial year, which is littered all over the different programs that I'm going to go through. Overall, in terms of performance in the year 21-22, this particular slide just breaks down in terms of quarters how we've been faring all along. You can see that the first 2 quarters everything was fine until we got to the third quarter, where what the chairperson was indicating started rearing its head, where we were not having a lot of responses from the municipalities with regards to updating the capacity assessment data set. I remember in March, I think we appeared before the committee when we were briefing the committee with regards to our performance for quarter 3. We presented the picture at that particular stage that we were having challenges with some of them. And I remember the committee even gave us advice on how to get around some of these things, which we have used and we really appreciated. Specifically, I remember there was suggestion that we must get in touch with the political heads in different provinces, which we have followed up through the office of the chairperson. So overall, the organization has succeeded in performing 95% of all its targets, less just 5%, which is that one particular target, which I'll get to when I get to the programs. With regards to the different programs linked to the outcome organizational excellence, we had quite a few targets in this particular one, and safe to report that all of those have been achieved. I'm going to highlight just a few because most of them are pretty much what the organization has mastered over the years. You can see that the first one talks to implementation of board resolutions, which are very critical because if the board takes decisions and they are not implemented, chances are even the actual targets of the organization are not going to be achieved. So for those particular ones, we achieved 100% of all the different resolutions. But also in terms of our compliance issues, you can see that, for example, reports on compliance with relevant legislation, which we jealously track on a quarterly basis to make sure that the organization tracks its successes with regards to compliance to legislation. There's a whole host of legislation that we have to comply with, and we monitor those on a regular basis and produce reports that are tabled with the MDB governance committees. So you can see that we have managed to achieve that particular target. but also in terms of organizational performance, which is probably why our achievement of targets it's relatively high. It's because we don't leave things to the end. On a quarterly basis, we make sure that all the managers account for their respective programs, how they are faring with regards to the different targets. So all of those have been achieved. As I said, with regards to this particular outcome, all the targets have been achieved. The second one is well-defined municipal spaces. This particular outcome houses the core business of the Municipal Demarcation Board. So, and this is where intensive work happens for the organization. The first one output was an analysis of municipal boundary determination proposals. By the 31st of March 2021, we had received several proposals for municipal boundaries. So before we actually started looking at them in terms of the Act, we had set ourselves to say, let's do an analysis for each one of them, amongst others, to make sure that we are sure of where the proposed boundaries are supposed to move from and to. Because the danger is sometimes if you just move and start working on the municipal boundary determination process, where people have proposed that the boundaries should go and sit, you might be dividing communities and all that. So we set ourselves to make sure that we do that preliminary analysis for each one of them. So that all of them were achieved, were analyzed, and we have achieved that particular. The second one, which is linked to that, because of the critical nature of the decisions that the board makes and the complex set of criteria that we look at, we sought to develop a multi-criteria decision support tool for the municipal boundary determination process. This is a tool that the board would use to make sure that all the different indices and indicators which are derived from the criteria are looked at. So we have managed to develop that decision support tool, which we have currently in the organization. The next one is reports on the analysis of administrative and service areas. This is the committee will be interested in because I'm sure the committee would have received in a number of places complaints that in some places we go, a member of the community would go to a clinic and they are told, no, you can't come to this clinic because you belong to municipality A and you are not in municipality B. So what we sought to do here is to make sure that municipal boundaries are aligned to service delivery boundaries. For example, education have got service boundaries. The Department of Justice, they've got magisterial districts. Department of Health have got health districts. And all of those boundaries, it's important that they also align to municipal boundaries because some of the powers and functions of municipal boundaries are linked to those functions. For example, municipal health, which is a function of a municipality, it's performed by a municipality, but the Department of Health have got a role to play. So if we are not aligned, that's where communities will find being tossed from corner to corner, being told you don't belong to this municipality, therefore you can't get access service here. So we were doing an analysis of our own boundaries to make sure that we identify where there are misalignments. And when we find out that, in most cases, we then communicate with the relevant sector departments for them to align their service boundaries to municipal boundaries to facilitate service delivery. The next outcome relates to improved access to research and spatial information. Here we've got one of them. We've developed what we call a knowledge hub, spatial data knowledge hub. You would know that spatial data, access to spatial data is very critical for planning and a whole lot of things. And we realized that out of our own struggles as a demarcation board, we felt that let's rather pull together all the different data sets that exist in the country and see if we can develop a repository where not only ourselves will have access, but also the other agencies in the organization. That has also been achieved. The one that the chairperson has spoken about is the norms and standards for municipal capacity. This is where we were doing an analysis to check if there are norms and standards for the different powers and functions that municipalities have in the country. The intention here is that because we are responsible for municipal capacity assessment as the organization, we need information that is linked to each of the powers and functions so that we are able to say, if this district doesn't have capacity to perform firefighting as an example, therefore what is the standard capacity in terms of infrastructure, finance, or financial, or finance or human capacity? What is the standard for each of the powers and functions? That was also done and finalized. But we also done a few reports, research reports. One that comes to mind is the one on city region in Gauteng, because it's likely that it may have an impact on the kind of work that we do, but also on the efficiency of amalgamations that we've done. I think the committee is aware of some of this work that we've been doing over the past 3-4 years. And the one that we did not achieve 100% is the one on municipal capacity assessment data update. We had a number of challenges with regards to municipalities taking their time to respond, as we reported in March. But in that regard, we managed to get, out of 249, we managed to get about 142 municipalities updating the questionnaire by the 31st of March 2022. And 107 of the municipalities did not. So the reason why we're saying we didn't achieve it is because we didn't meet our 249 target. However, I think, as it was also suggested in the previous meeting, we will continue, and we are continuing to make sure that the database is updated by all municipalities, even those who did not make it on time. So that process is continuing. We want to make sure that our database is up to date at all times. And even now, when we're going to be starting with the municipal boundary determination process, we are still chasing that particular information from municipalities because it's very critical for us to be able to do our work. The next one, outcome, is improved public and stakeholder participation. This is where, over the last 3-4 years, we have actually been intensifying it from time to time. Our belief is that this particular one, we have to do as much as possible to make sure that we take along our communities. In the annual report itself, there are details in terms of the publications that we've done, which are targeted to public awareness and education activities, and also stakeholder awareness and education activities. We have been out in the media. I remember just after we finalized the ward delimitation process, we went on a campaign, radio, newspapers, social media, to make sure that we inform members of the public about the completion of the ward delimitation process. But also a campaign on us starting the municipal boundary determination process. We went out into the media, radio, newspapers, and all that earlier this year. This is where we also developed what we called Know Your Ward campaign, where we were informing people about wards, where we developed a tool that people can always log in and access the ward in which they belong. So in this particular one, we've also achieved all our targets in terms of those 3 outputs that we have set ourselves. Slide number 20 is just illustrating figuratively what I was talking about essentially. In terms of our audit outcomes, the chairperson has already indicated that we have received another audit, clean audit, and we've been doing so now for the past 4 financial years. And I remember when we tabled our first in 2018-19, the committee members were saying, yeah, now you have done what we wanted you to do. However, the biggest challenge is that you must sustain. And I think it's that particular encouragement from the committee that is pushing us to make sure that we do our work properly. So that's where we are currently. We will continue to strive to make sure that we perform better, especially because we have to be accountable with the resources that the country is entrusting us. It's very critical. In terms of our spending trends over the years, from 2017. In the 2017 financial year, our income was about 60 million, and by then we had spent about 50 million. And you can see over the years, except 2021, where we had received about 63 million, and we spent our expenditure was about 63.669 after receiving 63.668. And in the current reporting period, which is 21-22, we had received 71 and we've spent 59. There are quite a few reasons why it's like that. One, the CFO might want to expand on this particular one, but I think I should indicate that our work sometimes is considered cyclical, and even in terms of our funding from the National Treasury, it's very critical that we as an organization are conscious of the type when certain work is going to happen. You will note that in this current financial year, as I will talk to just now, we've started with the municipal boundary determination process, which requires a lot more funding than we would normally get in this financial year. So what we do normally over the years, obviously in collaboration with the National Treasury, we make sure that the funds that are allocated in a particular year are, for lack of a better word, let me say, saved for the year when we get more intensive. So that is why you would find that some years we would have spent less than we normally would be required to. Slide 25 is just indicating, so the deficit overall was about 11 million, which is the funds that we are currently using in this financial year for the municipal boundary redetermination process. As I said, one of the reasons why we got that surplus is because the investigations for the municipal boundary determination process have been carried over to this particular financial year, this 22-23. So those funds are earmarked, that are showing surplus on the other side, are earmarked for the work that we're doing in this financial year. And linked to that is the publication. What we have noticed, actually what we have learned over the years is that publication in gazettes is actually a very expensive process. And our work, legally, we are obliged to publish our decisions in the provincial gazettes. So we need to be financially prudent in that regard. So that's why we make sure that we make provision in the preceding year to make sure that we are able to fund those core business of publication. So that's why that 11 million is also earmarked for the publication of notices and gazettes that we're going to be publishing in this 2022-23 financial year linked to the municipal boundary determination process. Linked to that again is the intensification of the stakeholder awareness and education projects. The municipal boundary determination process, it's probably one of the biggest work that we do as the municipal demarcation board outside of the ward delimitation process. Hence, we have made sure that we've got enough resources in this financial year for stakeholder awareness, communication, and education of our communities. In the MTF, the next financial, the 3 years, you could see that 23-24, we're going to have about 75 million, 24-25, 74, 25-26, it will go up to 27. You can see it's not really going up by much. And I'm not going to labor on the reasons why our baseline is not going up that much. The conditions in our own economy dictates that we have to tighten the belts as much as possible. Overall, besides the work that we have done last year, members, we felt it necessary that we need to brief the committee on where we are with regards to the municipal boundary determination process, so that the committee could be also on board in terms of what we are doing. We have opened the process in November last year and closed by 31st of March 2022. The process where we were saying to members of the public, please tell us if there are any proposed municipal boundaries that you want to make to the board. And we did that and closed on 31 March 2022. And those are the ones that we are currently working on. Just to share some information with the committee, the types of municipal boundary determination processes that cases that we deal with, we've got about 4 types or classes, if I may say so. There are those that we categorize as class 1. These are just minor technical adjustments where we're just aligning a municipal boundary maybe to a farm boundary or to a road where we think the boundary will be much better to identify. So those particular ones are classified as class 1. Class 2, 3, and 4 are slightly major or bigger changes to municipal boundaries. For example, maybe a ward might be moving from one municipality to the other, or a portion of a municipality, a chunk of a municipality is moving from one area to another. Or instances of amalgamations, where members of the public or stakeholders would want an amalgamation, or in some cases, somebody may want a recategorization of a municipality. For example, somebody may say we want our municipality to be categorized into a metro. So those are bigger municipal boundary determination processes that are classified between 2, 3, and 4. They differ in terms of size, spatial areas that that are affected. So those are the different classes that we have. And we are sharing this information because we have developed a program that is a little bit standard for the different classes of redetermination. The class 1s, which are those minor, smaller municipal adjustments where in some cases people won't even recognize that there was a municipal boundary change. We have already started with those by publishing what in terms of the act is called the section 26 notices. This is just a notice in the media, in newspapers, that says we intend to change a municipal boundary by aligning a boundary between this municipality and this one by aligning to farm, whatever. So we have published those and we received inputs, and the board has in September approved those for publication for objections. If anyone has got an objection to any one of them, we've published those. I think it was 2 weeks ago. We are going to be embarking now on a communication campaign to inform members of the public of the gazettes that we've published, because this one is legally supposed to be published in gazettes. So we've done that. Now we're going to be going out on a campaign to make members of the public aware of that particular process, and if they want to object, they can object to those changes. But overall, the entire municipal boundary determination process, we're intending to have that finalized by January 2024 before we start with the ward delimitation process for the next local government election. From slide 31, I think, and 32 is the overall program that we have shared with the committee in terms of the what we intend to do. You will see in there, we have also included the process that we're doing now with those bigger changes. We are researching them as I speak now. We've commissioned a number of studies for all of them to make sure that we gather data and information that will inform whether the board should change those boundaries or not. That's before we start with the actual municipal boundary determination process. And that's aimed to at least finish by December this year. And after that, we will then publish what we call the Section 26 notice in the newspapers, inform members of the public about those between January and February. After that, we consider all the views and representations that would have been received. And over and above that, the board will hold public meetings on all of those cases. Very critical. Public meetings are earmarked between April and May next year for the cases that the board would have felt that there's a need for that to happen. And over and above that, the research that I was talking about is actually what is legally called formal investigation. So, but as an intervention, after we've learned lessons over the years, the board has decided that we are going to conduct formal investigations in terms of Section 29 and 30 of the Demarcation Act. This is very critical because it's a new process that we are bringing in to intensify consultations and public engagement and participation in the process. So that whole process is earmarked between June and August next year. This is where anybody who would have made submissions, anybody who's got interest in the work that we're going to be doing or cases that we're going to be doing will be invited to appear before what we call an investigation committee of the board, and they make their inputs, and those inputs, remember, we would have done already the research, will be looked at against the research that we would have found to verify the information, and that is very critical so that the board's decisions finally, which will happen after all of these processes, it's informed by information, not without any form of research on the ground. So this is a very critical intervention by the board, which has not been done previously. So after all of that, the board will consider research studies reports from the formal investigations hearings that I spoke about, reports from the public meetings that I spoke about, feedback from the Section 26 notices and 21 objections that I spoke about, and then decide if the boundaries should be changed or not. So all of that is earmarked between November 2023 and January 2024. When all of that is done, the board will then submit or provide the final determinations to the Independent Electoral Commission for them to start with the preparations for the elections. Some of the challenges, which I'm sure the committee has had them before, obviously, one of our challenges is with regards to inadequate financial and human resources. Obviously, all of that are interchangeably related to one another. We raise this because, as you would know, the committee, I think we reported on several occasions that we would have wanted to have regional presence in different areas to improve on our stakeholder and public participation processes. Obviously, we are unable to do that because we don't have enough resources. What we do currently is to make sure that internally we are set up in a way that focuses on the different regions. We're right here at the Municipal Demarcation Board. So as we sit, we've got colleagues and members of the board who are focused on specific regions and provinces to make sure that all the issues that comes from different areas are received focus. But due to lack of financial resources, we are unable to have physical presence on a regular basis in those spaces. And that's what we would want to have going forward. But also, as the chairperson has indicated earlier, there's a level of dependence on municipalities, especially when we do public consultations and all that. And that, we find that it's a challenge because when you are not 100% in control of your own processes, chances are you're going to fall short on a number of things. What are some of the interventions? What we know is that the committee is already in its hands having the Independent Demarcation Authority Bill, which I'm sure is receiving attention. So it tries to address some of these challenges that we have at the MDB, especially around public participation. And so we are proposing that if that can be expedited, I think that will be well received. But also we will continue to intensify public and stakeholder awareness programs, but also to mitigate some of the weaknesses that we have around public consultation. We develop collaboration and partnerships with other entities and organizations in the country who may have better capacity than others to make sure that we do what we are supposed to do. In conclusion, members, we always appreciate the support that we get from the committee and the advice that we receive from the committee in terms of how we can do our work better. So, as I said earlier, the legislative review process is already in full swing, and the committee already have the Independent Demarcation Authority Bill, so which we think is going to go a long way to assist the MDB to be able to achieve its objectives. We look forward to further engaging with the committee on a whole lot of other matters related to our mandate. We are available for all of that, and we'll do it at all times. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Chairperson, members. There is the picture of the performance to date, and I think it will be proper then for us to hand over to the chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, that's the briefing. We are now free to engage with it in the best way to indicate that it's hands. So I see Honorable Hunevald, Honorable Mkhaliphi, and Honorable Space. Take it in that order.
What's
Can you guys hear me or must I talk loud? I'll use my stop share voice.
Oh, it's not working.
I can't hear it. On your presentation, there was reports on the crimes relevant designation. I want to ask if I can have that report. You will be able to send that report. The reports on compliance with relevant legislation. Is this thing working?
Yes.
So that reports, if you will be able to give that report to us, I think that will be an interesting read. Then in terms of norms and standards for municipal capacity, your research reports, number of research reports produced was 2. Will you be able to give that report as well? And that's for me. I just need that report.
You see? Cover. We just wanted to talk in
Now, what's the information?
No, she is saying I just want to talk.
Ah.
Thank you very much, Chair. This thing is not working.
for the camera, for the camera.
Oh.
Because of we want to hear the speaker, there's no speaker. It works with the camera.
Oh, okay. It's for the camera.
Yes.
I mean, I want the commission to hear. Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Congratulations on your achievement. And having said that, has anyone been held liable for 500,000 irregular expenditure incurred for following the appointment of a service provider whose tax matters were not in order with the South African Revenue Service? Why is this amount not disclosed in the report of 2021-2022, which is your annual report, Chairperson? The board's legal fees during this period under review have more than tripled from 562,000 in 2020-2021 to 1.8 million in 2021 to 2022. What explains the significant rise in legal fees during this period under review, Chair? During this period under review, Chair, the MDB, Financials and Services Delivery Performance regressed. Achievement of targets moved from 100% in the previous financial year to 95%. Spending on budget also regressed from 100% to 84.7%. How does the board account for this backward movement? Those are the research questions because Ramakata spoke about the research that you are conducting. Now, to engage with your presentation, I want to start with the slide of your presentation. No, in page 29, Chairperson. Let me just okay. On page, I think it's page 5, but there is written 9, but the heading is highlight 2021-2022 annual reports. All right, where you have indicated that you have achieved 90% of your APP targets, and you maintain a clean audit. I have already congratulated you. Now, because as we are here as committee members, we are representing people, chairperson, and the entire team. So you are telling us at number 3 that you developed a multi-criteria decision support tool for municipal boundary redetermination. Can you expand on that one, Mr. Ramakaz? In order for us, if you are also on the ground, be able to explain what does that mean? What tool is that? What does it also help the person there in Mangaung, Ward 17? It is what. So we are saying that you analyze 213 municipalities in terms of administrative and service areas. Why only 213 municipalities? Completed report on minimum norms and standards for all municipal powers and functions. What is that as well? Assisted 142 municipalities to update their capacity assessment data via an online questionnaire. So that is the question. I think the presenter, Mr. Ramakas, also spoke about this thing. And this is not the first time we are raising check, because your footprint, especially at a ward level, where it matters most, people does not know you as a board. That is the fact of the matter. I don't want even to say just ordinary people, also us, because you also saying that sometimes because of the resources constraints, you have to depend on municipalities. So now, we are saying that we were able to assist 142 municipalities to update their capacity assessment. Are you saying to us as a committee member, you also depend on the municipalities to for this online questionnaire? Please explain to this, because at some point, the chair, you'll forgive me, we have a really problem with the board whereby you take your function because of your resources, and then the municipality have to do your functions. And we spoke about this thing very, very, very lengthy, and we were so concerned. But you can't just rely on the municipality whatever reason. Please. So, because that is not a goal that you want to achieve at the end of the day. You extend your knowledge hub by integrating 2 special data products, continued its public and stakeholders awareness and education activities on demarcation processes. So I think he also elaborated when he was doing the presentation, including the campaign that you are embarking on. But the question now, as a board, so the education to people and so on, are you satisfied when as a board? Because as I'm sitting here, I'm not satisfied. The chair will know, in some of the issues, I just escalate to the chair, saying that it does not make sense in Ward 52 in Brooks Farm. So Ucholuti Ward is divided in 4 wards. Others, this section is belonging to other sections. And the community here, they think that no, we belong to under 1 ward. Until someone said to them, no, you don't belong to this ward, but it's just a small portion. So I'm saying to you, as we have developed this public and stakeholder awareness, how do you do it in order to educate people? Because my understanding is your core business is to educate people in order for not to have comebacks after we have demarcated and elimination and do whatever good English that you are putting it there. But it must not have come back. We know our past, what does that mean? Our hotong, and especially when it's time for voting, people are revolting with the different reasons. But now, because there's no elections that is taking place, we are relaxed, 2022, 2023. But comes 2024, if these things are not communicated properly to people, it will have a comeback. So please expand to us when you are saying you are developing those communication campaign tools, etc., and also link with the municipality whereby you depend on the municipality. And then again, last time when we were here, Chair, Honorable Mam Kiza is not here today. I remember one of your slides She even became an example with what you were also presenting to us. And then she was saying that you just take all people and then you just group them together, you take a photo, and then you come and present to us here to say you have consulted these people here. Can you imagine this old gogo here? What does this old gogo knows? If you remember very well, Chair, all of us were laughing. But we were laughing the way she was presenting it. But it's the fact of the matter as we speak now. How do you do it? I know this issue of resources. As a result, Chairperson, you also said maybe the new act is going to be a bill or is a bill already because it's in front of the committee. Some of the issues, some of your stresses, some of your concern will be addressed through that bill. But where we are sitting now, since the bill is still in the process, what is the plan to address those things on the ground? Because it's really a problem. Please talk to us in terms of putting into context the bill now. I know you came in the committee to take us through the bill, but now since you are still functioning as a board and the bill is also suggesting that it must be an independent board and so on and so on. But for now, how do we do it? So I understand when you were explaining about Muramakata, this class 1 and class 2, class 3, others are complicated. Please simplify for us. The reason why I was reading these highlights for this annual report was saying to you, if you are communicating with us, engaging with the committee, don't just take for granted. And then when you write a report, you think that now we'll understand. Analyze 218 municipalities in terms of administrative. We don't know as a committee. And we must not even try to say that we do understand your language. But at the end of the day, when we are questioned there by the ordinary people that you are representing, we won't be able to explain to them. So just simplify your report for us in order to understand, also to help you as an institution, because one of the reasons why we must also support you is to understand your work. So if those things can be clarified for me, I can be very happy, Comrade Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now covered.
Thank you, Chairperson. First of all, allow me to say thank you to Mr. Ramakatsa for the presentation and well done. I welcome the fact that you are stating that there will be public meetings on all cases from April 9, 2023, and obviously we will be watching that very closely. I would not be doing my job if I'm not raising issues that sometimes are uncomfortable for some, because I'm representing people who have elected me into this position. So I want to raise a particular matter, and that concerns the breach of Section 12 of the Local Government Municipal Demarcation Act. And just to just take out that part is that the statutory code of conduct for MDB members contains the following prohibition in Section 12(1)(e) of the Act, that a member of the board may not act in any way that compromises the credibility, impartiality, independence, or integrity of the board. Now, it is public knowledge that the chairperson of the board is actively campaigning to become the provincial chairperson of the ANC in the Free State, while continuing to serve in what is meant to be a politically impartial position of the Municipal Demarcation Board. And from media reports, we understand that that is what is happening. So it's out there in the public. So I need to raise this, and I want to say this body is really charged with determining the boundaries of the municipalities and municipal wards. And it fulfills an important constitutional function that requires not just chairperson, the fact, but the reasonable perception of impartiality. Now, there's been lots of historical examples of gerrymandering, and I would like to say the following. In the recent past, MDB decisions, including its unsuccessful proposal to merge Midval and City municipalities in the Gauteng, were challenged on the grounds of being motivated by ulterior party political purposes. And in this regard, Chairperson, I raise it in front of the chair, not behind him, so that the chair has an opportunity to speak to us on this matter. Thank you.
Honorable Irregular.
We're covered.
I just want to give clarity.
Which clarity? Thank you, Chair. Let me also welcome the presentation and greet everyone that is part of the meeting. Chair, I only have 2 questions. When you're looking at the key challenges that has been raised by Municipal Demarcation Board, they also raise lack of regional representation continues to be a constraint in the MDB. I think this matter is not raised for the first time. It's always been there. And we agree that they are functioning under extremely limited resources. However, during our last encounter with them when we were discussing this matter, there was a proposal that all the board members will be deployed to different provinces and work with municipalities in order to address this matter. So I would like to check with them if they did implement that, and if they did, what are the challenges and the achievement on that proposal that was proposed when we're discussing this matter. Secondly, Chair, we know that the last time when we had a meeting with the MDB, the issue of the CEO was raised. So I thought by this time they would have appointed a new CEO of the Demarcation Board, but I've heard that there's someone who's acting. So I just want to get clarity as to what happened to that process, because it was a long time ago. I think it's almost 6 months if I'm not mistaken. So how far are they in terms of the process of appointing the CEO? And secondly, there was an issue of the CEO which the board did present to us. Can they brief us as to how did they manage to resolve those issues that they raised with the previous CEO who was here? Thank you, Chair. And then the other one of politics.
Honorable Nkomza,
After me, no, I think we want to give clarity on the political matter. Okay,
Thanks, sir.
There's a difference between being full-time and partial.
I am troubled by this.
she is going to respond.
Protect the chair.
No, I'm protecting.
Is it actively full-time or impartially?
Chair, explain really. This is not the thing.
Honorable Nkomza is on the floor.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. I was saying, Chair, I am troubled by this back. It's really troubling me. And it's divided my attention all the time of the presentation. And I was thinking of killing it without the permission of the chair of the board. But I respected them, the board. My chair is more on the classes. It's class 1, 2, 3 branch. So class 1 is a minor insignificant determination of an outer boundary. Now, in the case of the major boundaries, your 4 to 5, with implications of actually collapsing an existing municipality. What would be the predominant determinant in arriving at that? Would it be the proposals from the people? Or would you use your own demarcation criteria if then your own demarcation criteria is an overriding criteria, you would not consider the proposal submitted by the people. Such proposal in compliance with the criteria, because it would be, because one of your criteria is that communities must have access to services. Because in some of your previous demarcation, you find that some communities are demarcated outside their own towns. So they have now to pass their own town to seek service in another next municipality in another town. And they have to travel almost 200 to 400 kilometers. I have a specific example, Chair. Your Prodo. You have people from the municipality of Tabagu that had to travel down from Municipal River, almost 200 kilometers up to Montfrey. From Montfrey to Kumbu is 40 kilometers to seek service, leaving their own town. Now, I'm citing an example to say, would such proposals be the dominant factor in arriving at a determination of the very complex major redeterminations? Thanks, you.
Follow up. Something that you forgot.
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's just one item or one issue. Mr. Ramakasa, you spoke about the research that you are conducting. I just want to get a clarity. Is the research in-house or you depend on students like within age, because they are students as well, if they conduct studies or research on demarcations and then you use the studies? And then, because the reason for my question is that it's good to use the research, but we must balance the research with what is happening on the ground. I really have a concern in terms of how the board reach out to poor communities. If when you respond, even if I'm not clear, if you can hit hard on that one, in that aspect, because that way I think now about Manuel and the team, Siswam as a deputy chair and the whole team, you sleep peacefully at night when you know the public, the people are understanding, have a clear understanding of your work. Whether the research is good, is nice, is progressive according to you because you are very academically, but if an ordinary person is confused, I don't think you'll be very given. So I wanted to get that clarity on the question, on the research type of questions. And then, if you suppose about Manuel, as you are giving the overview as the chair of the board, please use that issues that I sent it to you, because you understand where I come from. Where I said Pilani must conduct to direct, and then you must also explain how the board intervene in the situation whereby a member of public is going to send you issues to say that no, here we have a situation whereby the community have realized that we are divided. But we told you vela ayiko into endisa lapha ya okwamanje, we have done your work in that particular area. So how do you intervene after such a long time? Thank you very much.
I think we have allowed the members to exhaust themselves. You can take it and chairperson, you start and guide the process.
Now, first, Chairperson, honorable members, of course, I must indicate, Chairperson, our intention is to make sure that when members leave here, they are fully clarified on the issues that they've raised. And thanks, Dr. Nova, on the 2 reports, which should be availed as soon as possible. I would like first to hand over chair, through you of course, to the deputy chairperson to respond on some of the questions that have been raised. And also ultimately you'll also hear the voice of the CFO responding also on some of the matters. My deputy chair.
Thank you, Chair, Chairperson of the committee, members of the committee, and thank you for all the clarities and questions that have been raised. Of course, I will attempt to respond on the easy ones, and Chair will go and respond to those most difficult ones. Just to start with the question that was around the CEO process and the onboarding of the CEO. Just to inform the committee that we are almost completing the process, is nearing finalization. We should be doing the interviews in December, January. That is how far we have gone with the process. And we can assure the committee that as early as 2023, there should be an appointment of the CEO once all the processes have been finalized. As to how did we manage to deal with the matters that were reported to the committee, I will leave that to the chairperson to try and respond. I'll go to the issue or the question that was asked on the significant rise on board legal fees. And obviously the CFO will come in and give perhaps more details here. Must indicate to the committee that we were, served or received a number of whistleblower matters that have to be investigated, and we have to, follow the legal processes in terms of dealing with those matters and process them accordingly. And of course, you would never anticipate that there will be as many as we have received. I'm sure the CFO will give more details. So that will be, as a result of those whistleblower matters that were, processed by the board during this period. And yes, they have all been exhausted and they were properly processed, through the appointment of the investigators, which had to be done through external use of the service providers that were going to assist processing these matters. In terms of our stakeholder engagement and our awareness programs, yes, it can be raised as a concern, and we believe though that we have improved in our processes in terms of our engagements with our stakeholders. Our reports can attest to that in terms of our social media platforms, engagements that we have used, Facebook, our Twitter, and also our our interaction with our communities at a local level using your local radios and local newspapers. And we have gone to an extent of making sure that the information that is available to our communities is available in the language that they understand, because that has been a challenge in the past, so that our messages are able to go across to all members of the community. But we are improving in this area of engagement, and also we are enhancing our communication programs in terms of making sure that we are reaching out to all our communities. Maybe the acting CEO can maybe respond to the other questions.
Thank you very much. Member Mkalipi, your question as to whether with regards to our education and awareness efforts, are we happy? I would say no. Simply because we would want, I think you have expressed it well, that we would want a situation where even when we are done with our processes, at least we know that there's understanding in terms of our processes on the ground. And hence, I emphasize the fact that it's an area that we've identified when we came up with our strategy, that it needed to be intensified. It's an area that I have to address that it's a difficult one, but it's an area that at the MDB, it's like a swan song. Most of the colleagues here can attest. Almost on a regular basis, it touches on your question with regards to how, when people have approached us with queries, especially on ward delimitation, after we've done the wards, how do we deal with those particular matters? I can attest that on a regular basis, the chairperson, through the office of the chairperson himself, has been going around the country directly visiting most of those communities to explain our processes and to explain if we were to have corrections to those particular matters, what would be the process, especially with ward delimitations. It's an area that we can always identify that there are issues of maybe a ward is splitting a community here. Therefore, before we start with the next ward delimitation process, there's a need for voting districts to be demarcated so that when our boundary comes, we avoid the splitting. So the chairperson has been on a regular basis, and also members of staff on a regular basis visiting these particular communities, because the board had taken a decision that we needed to engage these communities directly because it's important. And that's why you heard the chairperson earlier indicating that as much as we didn't eradicate the unhappiness everywhere, but if you comparatively from all the other previous elections, there has been an improvement in terms of dissatisfaction on the ground. But we are not where we are, where we want to be. Hence, we are going to make sure that we intensify that process. With regards to your question on 213, why only 213 municipalities analyzed? 213 is a total of locals and metros combined. So that covers the whole country effectively. Removing the district, because districts share their boundaries with locals. So it's like all the local plus metros and the municipalities included. So we have analyzed the boundaries for all of those. You also wanted us to share a bit more light on the reports that we produced with regards to norms and standards for capacity assessment. What we were doing, members here, is that because we do municipal capacity assessment and we realized that we are supposed to make a determination that would assist the MECs when they adjust powers and functions between the districts and the locals. So we needed to go to look at all the powers and functions in the country. Let me use an example. I like firefighting. Firefighting, a municipality must know that, because in terms of this Municipal Structures Act, capacity is defined as infrastructure to perform that function. You must have, as a municipality, financial, you need to have money to do that function. You also need to have people to do that function. So that's broadly how capacity is defined. So what we were looking at is whether in the country as a whole, with regard to firefighting, are there norms and standards that tells a municipality that if you are performing firefighting, you need to have, for example, 20 firefighters. You need to have 10 fire engines. You need to have 30 million rands every year. So, so that when we come with our assessment, we should be able to tell that this municipality has got firefighting function, but they do not have firefighters. Therefore, they are not meeting the standard. So that's what we were looking at, so that we have reports that will tell everybody, and that information is in our report. It will tell whether, with regards to firefighting in the country for all municipalities, are there any at least minimum standards for a municipality to have, to be said to have capacity to perform a particular function. So those are the reports that we were generating. So the intention is so that going forward, where there's capacity, where there's norms and standards, when we go to municipalities, we ask them whether they've got fire engines. Do they have qualified firefighters? We are able to reference it against a particular minimum norm. Where there isn't, we communicate with the relevant national and provincial departments to say, perhaps there's a need to define at least the minimum standards, so that municipalities can capacitate themselves accordingly. So those are the reports that we were doing. Yes, the other question that you had relates to the knowledge hub. I'll ask my colleague Daniel to share in terms of those tools that we have developed and put into the knowledge hub. But also the multi-criteria decision tool. He will also handle that one briefly, just to expand on what that is all about. The next one, the CFO will assist us in terms of the question on which the deputy chair has already touched on, in terms of the financial year, why we had a bit of a rise in terms of legal fees, which the deputy chair, I'm sure she has covered already, but if the CFO needs to add a little bit, she can do that. And the other one, I think, comes from, the one from member Spees. I think I'll leave that for the chairperson, as she has indicated when she was talking to that particular issue. The member Direko, with regards to regionalization, yes, on several occasions actually, we have spoken about this particular one. Yes, indeed, members of the board currently, I think for a number of years since the beginning of the current board, have all been delegated particular provinces. And as I said earlier, even the staff, personnel in the core division internally, they have also been structured, aligned to those particular districts, particular regions and provinces. Hence, if there's an issue in a particular province, we don't just call anybody, but those particular people, because we want to build the body of knowledge so that communities get better assistance in terms of their specific issues. Unless if you keep on rotating and changing things, because people may not know the background and the issues on the ground. So that's how it is. In terms of challenges, obviously we're operating from national overall. So it's in a period when we are not intensively doing a particular way, like for example ward delimitation, we are able to visit almost every other community that or query that comes our way. But when we're intensively involved, sometimes it's a particular challenge. But we find that very helpful in terms of focusing the way we work in terms of municipal boundaries. I think Member Mpumza, I sympathize with what you're raising, because it's pretty much aligned to the issues that we're talking about, intensifying public participation and engagement. But it also talks to, you also spoke about, I think Member Mkalipi as well, about the criteria issues. What do they mean? Do you only look at the technical reports that you have and that's it? The answer is no. In the program that we have shared, you have noticed that after we've done the studies, there are, and I did indicate that the studies that we're doing now, it's before we even start with the actual legislative process. In other words, it's our effort to understand these particular areas as much as possible. And it talks to Member Mkalipi's question with regards to do you only look at your own criteria, and if it's against what the community wants, then that's it. No. The intention is that when you have technical facts that you have harvested from the communities and on the ground, when you go to public engagements, which is the next step, we'll finalize that, and then we'll go to public meetings. When you go to public meetings, you already have at least background information at those particular areas. And when people raise things, you are able to fit them into the information that you have. And then that can that actually influences the decisions going forward. You will also note that besides the public meetings, we have now come up with the process, what we are calling Section 29 and 30 formal investigation. It's a new implementation that we are putting into the process, over and above all of this that I'm talking about. It's an extra step where, because we know for a fact, some people enjoy sitting in their own lounges in the evening and send us a submission and say we want our community to be moved from here to there, only to find that those people sometimes they don't even stay there. In our experience, people will write, and when you go to public meetings, they say, but we never wanted this kind of a thing.
Who's Mkhalili who raised the thing?
Exactly. Exactly. So it's important that we have that process where people don't just go scot-free with community-related matters. So in other words, we want to invite these people to come and present their case in front of everyone. So that's why we call it them hearings, where even members of the community can attend and see the facts that are being represented or misrepresented about their own communities, so that we compile reports that we have a better understanding. Over and above that, after the board has taken its decision, we publish and say, members of the public, this is what we have. Please again tell us what you think about this. Then people will write as in terms of section 26. Then we will again corroborate with all the other information that we already have and see if there's validity and all of that. And after that, before the board makes a final decision in terms of section 21.5, the board publishes for objections. It's a critical step. In case somebody was not aware of the process, we say, this is what we have done. We intend to change this boundary. No, not intend, we have changed this boundary. Please, if you object, kindly do so and motivate why. And then they still have that opportunity. And we've had many instances where the board has decided not to continue with the determination based on objections that people can send in. Obviously, the objections are analyzed in terms of the relevant criteria, but also the input from public meetings, input from our research, and input from the submissions that we would have received. So those are some of the things that we are trying to do to improve the process and avoid decisions that are not justifiable in a way. That's some of the things that we are trying to do going forward. Yeah, the question is the research that I was talking about, whether it's in-house or not. These particular ones, well, the other ones that we spoke about earlier are generated internally. All of them, we do those research ourselves internally. But the ones that I spoke about with reference to the criteria for demarcations, where we have outsourced those, mainly because of the intensity of the process, and we needed more capacity to assist ourselves in that regard. And yeah, that's what we are doing. But in terms of balance, as I explained right now, the outcomes from the research results, it's not a determiner of a final decision of the board. It just contributes. So there's many other issues, as you would know, on the ground that you may not be able to pick up through a research. So you need to do what we spoke about, public engagements and stakeholder engagement processes. Over to you, Jen.
Okay, thank you. I'll go first and then I'll hand over to Dan. With regard to legal fees, there were few issues that were dealt with in the year under review that required us to use legal practitioners. The bidders, one of the bidders of the building, the current one that we are using, took us to the High Court, saying that the process was not fair. The process didn't proceed. They decided to not proceed with the case. So we incurred a cost in that regard. The other one was mentioned by the Deputy Chair. It's with regard to the whistleblower report that had to be investigated, and we needed to use legal practitioners for that. There was also an issue of the CCMA case where the former CEO took us to CCMA, and also the long outstanding issue of the former executive manager who took us to the labor court. So those are the areas that we dealt with last year that resulted in high labor fees for the year under review. The other question was with regard to irregular expenditure. This irregular expenditure is not coming from non-compliance for the year under review. It's coming from a 2018 non-compliance. But because we are using the same service provider, it relates to the case of the former executive manager. So those were the costs for the labor court that she took us to. So, but as long as we are still using that service provider, we'll always indicate irregular expenditure, but it's not new non-compliance. So that's why if you look at note 27, it does indicate that it's prior year non-compliance. That's why the guidelines for completing the annual financial statements is that you indicate the details the first time the non-compliance occur. The other years you just disclose the amount related to that. And then with regard to who has been held liable, the official who caused this irregular expenditure was disciplined. That's another matter that caused legal fees to go up. We had started the labor process there for discipline. However, the contract of the responsible official ended before the process could be finalized. So we couldn't proceed because there was no longer employee-employer relationship. However, the case has been reported to the police and has been handed over with all the necessary information. Thank you.
All right. I would like Vicky to just project just the types. This was a question on the types of municipal boundary determinations. So if you look at class 1, we call it technical and minor boundary determination because it is not affecting larger areas. You'll find that we just want to align the municipal boundary to, it's either a road or we align it to a river just to make it identifiable. And we also maybe align it to a farm boundary. So you'll find that the only people who are affected, it might be a farmer. So we just have to discuss with the farmer and also with the municipality to check on their taxes and rates, how they're going. So that is why we say it is not affecting the municipality in terms of the functionality. Then the class 2 is what we call consolidations and annexations. So in this case, you will have maybe a ward, people in a ward moving from one municipality to another, or it might be a village, and normally those kind of proposals come because they will say a village is close to a certain town in another municipality, so they will be better served if they go to that other municipality. So in this case, you will have some medium size of the population actually affected by this kind of redetermination. If you go to the next one. So these are just examples. You can see it is just a line. We're just aligning to a main road. So it's not affecting anyone.
It's this
Now you can see the overview map just in that corner in the left-hand side. Just keep on rolling. And the other one is just a farm portion that is also moving to another municipality. Then the third one is what we call amalgamations. So this is what the example that one of the members have given. That you'll find that Midval and Lesedi have to be combined and they have to form one entity. We had the Potchefstroom actually going with the Tlokwe to form a single municipality. So those ones are major ones, and they have, you can say they have a bigger effect. The impact is actually large in those municipalities. because they have to now combine their systems. If there are people that have been in both municipalities, you have to now have all those people in the same entity. So you'll have some of the people actually losing their jobs and so on. So that is the amalgamations. Then class 4, you have the categorization of municipalities. In this case is when a local municipality or a district is now categorized into a category A municipality or a metropolitan municipality. So the main thing that changes, because most of the time people think if you move from a local municipality to a metropolitan municipality, the grants, the state grants will actually increase. But that's not the case. You'll find that when you move to a metropolitan municipality, even the grants are reduced. It means now you can raise your own funds, and you can also look at your tax base and so on. So those are some of the things that we look at. So those are the classes that we have in municipal boundary determinations. I think that one is clarified. And with the next one, I think in your pack you will have it's a small pamphlet that says, "Did you know?" So that is the Special Knowledge Hub that we have. It is an online site that is facing to the public, meaning that any member of the public can actually access it. If you look at it, we have a URL or a link that can be sent to members. This site has all the maps that we have collected on wards, the maps on municipalities, and it also has what we call applications, and anyone in the public can actually access it on their mobile phones. And as you know, the mobile phones, we can say 20 million of South Africans have smartphones, so they should be able to access it even in the rural areas. So that is the site that we have. We call it Special Knowledge Hub. On the issue of the decision support tool, or the multi-criteria decision support tool, if you look at our legislation, we have nearly 12 factors of demarcation. And those factors are very broad. You'll find that they're not easily measurable. So what we have done is we took all those factors and we have developed measurable indicators for those. And the main reason is that we want to make a demarcation process a process that's not only dependent on who is the board member. Even after the board that we're having now is gone, we should have a process, or we should have a method that is more consistent. So that is why we have developed the multi-criteria decision support system. It is more for the use of the people inside. It is not for the outside. But we collect all the information through research and everything. And when the board is sitting and they are analyzing all those cases, they will be able to use the decision support tool to actually help them with making their decisions.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, members, honorable members of the committee present here. Let me also, in attempt to addressing some of the queries and the request for explanation, indicate we must remember, particularly on what delimitation members, we must remember, members, that it is not our initiative just to split the wards. It is because of the factors that we all need to be aware of. For instance, the formula that determines the number of councillors, of course, it impacts on the number of wards that we would be having as we move towards local government elections. Of course, political parties will be able to have more councillors. Unfortunately, then we have to deal with the wards to accommodate that type of a setup. And that's where then we get the wards, or the VDs as we call them in most cases, being split and so forth, simply because we are creating a new ward. And a new ward, obviously, it would be a sort of an amalgamation of adjacent wards. And in order to do that, you then get those challenges that have been raised, particularly, for instance, the issues that we've been faced with in Ward 2. Although, through this exercise, when we're talking about classifications, in most cases when we realize that the community has been split, but let's say mainly your traditional area community, because obviously we would love the king, the chief, to have the community under a sort of one ward and so on. That's where we try also. But what then disrupts is when you then go back again and you've got the formula that then again impacts. So it's a little bit difficult setup, but nonetheless, we are trying to make sure that all the time, wherever possible, because there are areas that will not be possible, try to maintain communities in one area. And we know also, of course, members, that some of the dissatisfactions, they come simply because of people being used to voting at a particular place, and then if a portion has to go and vote in another area, that brings dissatisfaction. But I'm trying to indicate it's not simply because the board decides just to split the ward and so on. It's because of those determining factors. And unfortunately, because these processes have time frames, when the process is closed, there's not much that the board can do, because if you then have to reopen, you might then legally be found wanting. If one community member takes you to court, that was the closing date, everything was completed, you then did something else, we would then, of course, the board would then lose the cases. So there are those difficult areas that basically, as the board, we are dealing with, including on this next question of outsourcing our functions maybe to municipalities. Chairperson and members, we should remember it is in terms of the act that the office of the speaker is expected, when there are community engagements in council or in the municipality, to play a role there. That's why then we go through the office of the speaker to try to get assistance in terms of getting the communities maybe under one roof, because it is their function. And in most cases, members, we have gone to an extent of even consulting with communities when the act is just silent. We took this initiative simply because we understood that it would be better for communities to be informed all the time. Yes, as Babu Ramagaza has indicated, not necessarily Free State, has indicated, I don't think we would ever, within this term of this board, be able to say we have done enough in terms of those consultations. I would quite be surprised that even members of parliament would understand all the intricacies of the municipal demarcation board. It is quite a tedious process. So you can imagine when it goes to communities out there. Most of the time we like to focus on the issues that we have to deal with. But the unfortunate part is, the assumption is because it's a municipality, the office of the speaker would know the area that is being affected or will be affected, and it is the community that will be called under one roof if we have to. And we know the dynamics and the politics of local government. Sometimes you find that that office is not accepted well accepted in a particular portion of the ward, and then the meeting would not take place in that section. Unfortunately, in this kind of case, you find that we also, because of lack of regional presence and so on, we would not understand those local dynamics, only to find later when we get complaints and so forth. So I'm just highlighting the difficulties that the board is faced with in doing some of its work. And at the same time, not say we are not going to pursue these matters until we get them right. Yes, but it is through voting. In our democracy, when communities want a particular way, we can't just ignore them and say, no, the objectives in terms of redetermination are this, and in 2029, it is not necessarily matching with those objectives as per redetermination as outlined in the Act. But at the same time, we also have to balance with when we are taken to court, we are seen to have gone and acted in the manner that the Act has stipulated. So in most cases, we also, when we engage with communities that are going to be affected, we also indicate to them what would be the criteria and what would be expected, so that they also either can be able to explain themselves proper and motivate much better. And hence, we have taken this decision that the acting CEO is talking about, where we would also, through our investigation, be calling members, the applicants, even those who are opposing, to make sure that at least at the end of the day, there has been intense consultation on those matters. I thought I should just highlight those as probably the easiest explanations before we go to the little bit difficult one. Members, while it will not be all members, but the majority of members of parliament know that this chairperson is having a particular history. And because of that, the chairperson has been acting in such a manner that, because it was going to be clear that there will be focus on the person, the chairperson, and he has to act in such a manner that at least South Africans would say he was at least independent in performing his duties. And I think to date, since the board was established, the chairperson has tried to act in a manner at least that could be seen to be impartial. I'm trying to say, to date, I have not been found wanting when it comes to impartiality as the chairperson of the board, because it is about the integrity of that chairperson, and of course the image and so forth, and it might also affect his future if he acts otherwise. But of course, even if members of parliament have accepted the role that this individual is playing as the chairperson of the board, there is a concern, and a concern that is being raised, that even if he has acted impartial to date, maybe when he is running now for a political party position, he will then start acting impartial. Well, of course, it is a perception, and we cannot predetermine the future behavior. But as long as I'm aware that at the end of the day, it will be about my image as the chairperson of this board, I would want to act in a manner that at least I would not really be found wanting in this regard. And of course, members and my honorable chairperson, if things go according to my wish, I would wish that you give the necessary support. But if they go according to my wish, I will have to resign from the board and do the political work, which would obviously be partisan political work. That is clear. There is no question about it. I have consulted the minister in this regard. I have also sensitized the office, the higher office, that I'm embarking this exercise. And at the right time, if things go well, I will then have to relinquish my duties. I should do that because it will not be proper also in terms of my image that I just had without the person who appointed us here knowing, and then I just do my own things. So I'm trying to indicate to the committee, I'm mindful of that fact, my honorable member, and it is proper and good that the matter is being raised. And I think no one would want to embellish or, in a way, rubbish the institution simply because of his act and conduct. And if that be the case, ultimately, of course, the committee will have to interpret. With that said, I hope I'm trying to settle the matter. I know that it might not be an adequate response, but yes, immediately when I'm found wanting, the committee will have to act accordingly. For now, I have been acting impartial, and I've tried my best to make sure that the institution, not me as an individual, of course, through this collective that you have appointed to lead this institution, that it performs quite well in a manner that you also will be proud of. I thank you very much, Major.
Yeah, Chair, I don't know how did they miss it. I asked them in terms of the new bill to constitutionalize your work. Yeah, it's the one. I don't know if I could also say just do a blog.
You are on the floor.
Okay.
Helps.
All right. Bring my. I'm saying for the comment, but I can speak without it. Is it fine? I'm asking. The other check can be. There's a key. Okay, thanks, Chair. I hope they are going to respond because it's very important to understand in the context of the bill with the function of the board. Chair, when the Deputy Chair respond in terms of the whistleblowers, which also have funds or financial implication, I didn't grasp it. I even whispered to my colleague here, what are the matters that could be whistleblowing in this institution? If you can make some examples, because I'm struggling to think of one matter that can be one of the whistleblowing in the institution. That is one. Thanks for your honesty, Babu Ramakaza. Yeah, your honest opinion, view, because we can do all we can do as an institution, but if it does not translate to the ground, so it's those studies and whatever we are doing as an institution, it does not have any impact on the ground. And your work suggests that you must have an impact on the ground. But I was hoping that the chair of the board, because as he was explaining, that in other life of him, is a political activist. You see, to simplify for us, when we are engaging with you through to you, Chair, we also learn as committee members. We must also acknowledge that. We must learn how we work, in order for us to understand, in order for us to do our work better. So maybe, Chair, I don't know, we need more of the time with the board to understand exactly, because if I'm listening to the Chair, for instance, the Chair, I was hoping that you are going to also to respond to what 52 matters. Where I come from, when I'm listening to you, we are saying that there are other factors that informs you to take a decision to divide the ward or the municipality. And the little brother there was very clear on to say what are the categories, class 1, class 2, class 3, what it informs them is very clear to me. But when it comes to a ward, what are those factors? Where do you enter, where do you start as a board now to say that this ward needs to be divided? Maybe it's the population, or you said it's number of councillors, but before you arrive there as the board, who informs you, go and intervene there? But one of the explanations you said that someone is applying. I'm sitting there at home, I'm applying, I'm suggesting that this must be removed. And okay, the other thing is that you as a board now, when you're doing your studies, you must go there. For instance, in 152, if I can paint a picture, I'm making an example. This community, formerly before 1994, it was an Indian community, right? Politically, the new era wanted to ensure Uti is not dominated by one particular race. So let us have New South Africa. And then you demarcate a ward to make sure that this ward is mixed, right? So now, at the end of the day, so the ward that used to be a mix of Indians and black people, right, is called Ward 52. But after 5 years, this ward is divided to 3 now. It's Ward 51, Ward 52, Ward 57. One community. Fast forward, now there's a complaint that is coming to the chair of the board. We have a situation in this ward, particular ward, because this section is taken to the Ward 57. When there are resources, as Babu Uramat, will forgive me, Babu Ramakat was also explaining that there is also this issue of resources. So there is a lack of water. Ward 52 councillor is bringing water to this particular ward. And he is saying that, no, I'm not going to provide this section because it belongs to Ward 57. And then there is a problem right there. The community say, no, we're thirsty, and we stay with you here. So you can't be saying to me, I can't get Itek Lamans. And then we said, no, but go and ask Ward 57 council, which is very far from you. Now there is this situation that is brought into attention of the board. So if I was listening to you very attentively, you were saying the chair has also visited those areas who raised some concerns, but I don't remember visiting that particular area. Maybe we are going to give some reasons. So if you can help us to say, Tina, as a board, we start our process maybe from January of the year, and then we do attend to queries after some time, and then in order for us to have the clarity, in order to explain to queries, maybe we can be efficient. Thank you very much, Chair.
If we were to go to each case, I know the chairperson knows my constituency as well. But I think it's just principles in terms of this. Generally, communities are divided. Maybe Honorable Mkalipi, I can confirm, he did go to one of the wards in my constituency. I don't know, he is going to say, how did he miss?
Maybe still going to go. Still coming.
Thank you, Honorable Mkalipi. Yes, I didn't indicate, the actual issue or that was behind the whistleblower matter. It was a sexual harassment claim that was leveled against. Yes, it was investigated, and the person that was allegedly leveled the claim, or allegedly, you remember the case, so that's the matter.
Thank you, Chairperson, honorable members. Ma'am Kalim, we can give an explanation exactly what has happened in Ward 52. Gosh, I think maybe not here because I don't have the records. But generally speaking, remember on the issues among wards that when you create a new ward, there's that issue a norm. Now you have to have a ward which would have a specified number of voters so that it qualifies to be a ward. Now what do? You cut voting, you take a voting district, sometimes you take about few. Let's say the ward in a voting station says in 3, the one that is lesser, so that it remains with a higher number as a ward, the lesser portion, and you cut on the other ward also the lesser portion to make it obviously an acceptable number. So that portion, which obviously now belongs either to the new ward or to the old ward or to another ward, you would then have those challenges, issues of the service delivery, because this side, the public representative is active and so on, and on the other side, the public representative is not very much active and would not necessarily serve the community as they would love and so forth. Then you get those complaints, we are not being served this side, we better go back to our old ward and so forth. But now I'm just demonstrating, I'm not indicating, save for the members to get exactly the picture. And in that Ward 52, we could indicate what are the issues. And yes, in some other cases, we have also, because we were preparing for elections. Remember when we do the ward delimitation, it's mainly for election purposes. Then later when we get all this, we say as we prepare for the next elections, we would have to look into whether this can be rectified without actually affecting the number of potential voters that are expected within that particular ward. But in this case, Ward 52, I think we can be able to give an explanation on it, Garse, without talking like theoretically here. I'm just clarifying what happens that you find a certain number of communities now having moved into another ward instead of being a stable ward and so on. Hence, our inputs on the new bill, that we are going to talk on that we were proposing that this period of 5 years doesn't give stability for municipalities to be able to do their work proper. When you come again after 5 years, when people are trying to readjust and so on, you remove again to another area or so on. So those were the issues that we raised when we were looking into the bill. And I think, Barbara Magas, it's your turn now to
Thank you very much, Chairperson. With regards to the bill, the reason why I mentioned that it will go a long way in terms of assisting us in terms of public participation. Number one, there's now a chapter which is dedicated specifically to public participation and consultation related issues. That's number one. And the main reason is so that the process for public consultation, it's clear for everybody to see what, so that they know the expectations. Because often the way it is currently, it's infused in between the legal process itself in such a way that people may think it's a by the way. So hence we made a proposal that let's have a dedicated chapter that talks to public participation, that specifies what public participation for ward delimitation is in terms of process. This is where you start. If you're consulting communities, for example, I'm just setting example. For example, you have to, 2 weeks before the public hearing, you have to make sure that you publish in a newspaper that circulates in the area for everybody to know when is it. And in that notice, it even tells the board how the notice should be like. We have to make sure that we communicate the venue and the time and the purpose of that submission, so that nobody will say, we didn't know where the venue of a public meeting is going to be. And it also specifies how the board should consider the submissions and the inputs that comes from members of the community and infuse it into the process. But I wanted to talk to issues of ward delimitation, which is most critically what you are referring to. That results in most instances split communities and all that. What the bill is trying to do, as one of the proposals, we are proposing, in terms of the norm, currently the Act says the board can only deviate from the norm. In other words, the board can only allow a certain number of wards, maximum and minimum. In other words, a ward in a particular municipality can only have, let me use an example. The norm for eThekwini metropolitan municipality, which means the average number of registered voters allowed in a ward in eThekwini, as an example, if it's 1,000, it means the board can only deviate 15% above that 1,000. We can only delimit a ward that is within 15% of the number of registered voters. Even below, the ward cannot delimit a ward that has got less number of registered voters than the minus 15%. So we have to be within those parameters. So and we found that has on many occasions resulted in the board ending up splitting communities, because when you try to fit them in one ward, they've got too many registered voters to allow us to fit within that parameter. So we end up doing what the chair was talking about. A certain portion will have to go to another ward, a certain portion will have to go to another ward. So we have proposed that the deviation, instead of 15%, the board may be allowed, I think it's up to 30%, but on condition. Because there's a trick to this. If the board just willy-nilly deviates, there might be a challenge where you have wards that are too big or either too small in a municipality, and we don't want that, because wards are expected to be equitable. So where the boundary is likely to split an obvious community, in other words, if, for example, it's Umlazi section whatever, and we find that after doing the calculation, that section of Umlazi will have to be split into two, and you leave out two blocks outside of that ward, we may be allowed, but we need to prove that, so that there's no abuse of that particular process. So those are some of the things that we're trying to address, this dissatisfaction where people are split unnecessarily. But like I said, it's just a proposal at the moment. So that's some of the things that we're trying to do. But also the bill proposes for an appeals authority. When all is done and people are still dissatisfied, they'll still be allowed to appeal those processes, and there's an appeals authority proposed to consider those people who are still dissatisfied, so that they can get some form of redress. Yeah.
I suspect that we must have exhausted everything. So we are, Chairperson, about to close, but I wouldn't want to close you out without saying anything before we close. Can you take it? No, I'm giving you to close.
No, thanks.
Closing remarks.
Thanks, Chairperson, members. Bengizojabulela if the deputy chair is the one who will thank members for visiting us instead of me. Mina ngizo arrange that for indaba yase ward 52. Ngoba nayo izosuka imoshe izinto kuyathi yabo kahle kahle kulobe ngafuna ukuya kwezinye indawo. So ngizoyilungisa yase 52, but I would like our chairperson to, our deputy chair to thank the members.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. And I know layers 52 uzothumela mina nje. Sengiyibonile. No, thank you very much. We would like to thank you, Chair, and the committee, you know, for taking the time to come and be with us today. We know that you have a busy schedule. You have a program that you are running to have these sort of sessions, and yet you managed to come and see us in order to understand more the work that we do as the Demarcation Court. We do thank you for that time, and do also take into consideration as well, you know, issues that we have raised as the board in terms of the challenges that we are facing in doing our work, because a lot is expected out of us, but there are some constraints in some of the areas. But we are committed as this board to do the work as it is expected in terms of our act. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all the committee members that are here. Thank you.
That almost bring us back close to closing. I think what the members did raise, all of them, they say thank you for the consecutive clean audit outcomes for the last 4 years. So that helps all of us, you know, to understand that there's a sense of good work that is being done. Number two, I think we have noted some of the areas that demands support from our side and from whoever who might have that responsibility. And number last, thank for the transparency, Chairperson. I wanted to defend Honorable Spice, your space.
Oh.
Honorable Space, but you suggested he must respond. And now I could see you nodding when he was responding. And by implication, it's things that we don't know. They are happening out there, but we live where we live. So when they get raised, not necessarily that we say this is on the agenda. So thank you very much, Chairperson, for responding, so that everybody is made to understand what are the processes. The meeting is closed. Thank you very much.
And then you must stop using Action SA colors.